Welcome to Across the Pond, a podcast for leaders in market research to help them grow their insight agencies, with Steve Henke and Paul Griffiths.
Well, hi, and welcome to Across the Pond podcast, a podcast for growing your insights agency. I'm Steve Henke with Harpeth Marketing.
Hey, and I'm Paul Griffiths from Client Advocates. And today's episode is all about the CEO Summit that Steve and I attended in Miami last week. We thought we would do a special episode just to understand and explain our key observations, takeouts, and lessons learned from it, because we thought that would be valuable to people who maybe were there and as a recap, but also for people who weren't lucky enough to be there to get some value, some views, and some ideas about kind of what's going on in the marketplace and how it can help you grow your insight agency. We're going to stick to our 20-minute rule. So we're going to dive straight in. Steve, from you, I know we've got a few ideas, but I'd be really interested to hear what's the first thing that you would say you really came out of the CEO Summit?
Let me give a quick background here, Paul, in that this was your first time at the CEO Summit.
It was.
And it was my 7th or 8th time. So I think we kind of came at this from slightly different perspective, which I think is a good thing. And we can share that today. My takeaways from this event are always kind of consistent from year to year, that it's really because of the way that it's structured, limited to about 100, though. I think it got to about 130 this year, 130 business leaders, no exhibits, sitting around talking, no breakout sessions. We were all in the same room together, orchestrated, social times. It's not so much about the topics. It's about the opportunity to connect with your fellow business leaders in a way that is authentic and unique in our industry. I think it's one of the reasons our industry is so collegial is we have these opportunities to talk with other business owners who would generally be competitors, but, without certainly crossing any lines, we're able to share and commiserate about what's going on in our industry. I think, and, you will talk about this, but the no surprise, the number one topic, at least in terms of number of sessions covered, was AI.
Yeah.
But there were some other kind of non-research things covered too that were more sort of business owner, business leader topics, which I also appreciated. But it was kind of in that way consistent with past summits in that there was great interaction amongst the participants and an interesting variety of topics. So nothing specific stood out to me other than it was exactly what I was hoping it would be.
Okay. So yes, I mean, as you said, I was a newbie. I thought the conference was excellent. I had, you told me you thought it was a kind of a standout event. And other people had said the same. I thought it was excellent. I would say if you are you're in the UK and you are a leader and owner of an agency and you're thinking about growing your business into the US, I think, next year you should be thinking about going along. I think it's excellent. It's your perspective from what you said, Steve, about the networking, about the openness and transparency. I think the Americans call it Vegas rules. I would call it Chatham House rules. It's the idea that kind of what's talked about in the room stays in the room in terms of any kind of transparency. And I think I was genuinely taken by the level of openness and honestly vulnerability at points. People talking about their business, their challenges, their worries, their concerns, their opportunities. So from that perspective, I thought it was a really standout event. I think there were there were absolutely a couple of the talks that really, really stood out from me. To your point, not necessarily around the insights, although there was a lot of stuff around AI and insights, and I buy some of that. But I think the stuff around, there was two presentations, one from Andrew Emery, who is the head of insight and transformation, I think, at Eli Lilly, so a client-side organization. And then a chap called Stephen Wonker. He's written a book called AI and the Octopus Organization, which, thank you for that, Stephen. I grabbed my copy. Really struck me was how organizations are changing because of insight and how insight is at the leading edge of some of that transformation. And Andrew and Stephen both talked, I think, very sensibly about the opportunities to use AI to improve business decision-making and speed up decision-making. So Andrew talked about the fact that I think Eli Lilly want to increase their rate of product kind of to market by sort of, they want to cut it in half, and how insight is helping to deliver and activate that. Stephen was talking about octopuses, which I didn't know, but they have 9 brains, one in each arm, and then a central brain. And in the same way that AI can now create independent brains and operations in different parts of a business, but which all communicate and collaborate together. So, and I think those are 2 really powerful learnings that I took away and need to think about in terms of how agencies are going to need to transform to become more effective and more successful in a world where AI is embedded into lots of businesses. So potentially you have an insight agency with different AI operations in different bits of it. So you might have a sales and marketing AI, something you and I, Steve, might have an interest in or a perspective on. You might have an AI agent or activity around people development and coaching and the HR side of things. You might have one for finance. You might have one for distribution. You can start to imagine how this imbues into an agency and makes an agency successful and then therefore more geared for growth across the piece. I was really struck by that, and that's giving me lots of cause for thought. A week afterwards.
I like both of those as well, and I have the book too. So
yeah,
thanks, Mr. Wunter. The 2 topics that resonated most with me were not research related. One was from J. Walker Smith, the economist at Kantar, and the other was from Howard Feinberg, who's the lobbyist for the Insights Association.
Yeah.
J. Walker Smith, if you are not following him on LinkedIn, you absolutely need to be doing this. Incredibly smart guy and an engaging and energetic presenter, which I think was, his half the battle. But last year, he talked about changing in the world's population, how 50 years from now, China's going to have half the number of people that it has now. Similar, not as extreme, but similar trend in the U.S. and a lot of countries. This year, he talked a lot about kind of changes in the consumer mindset, the impact of COVID and what that has done for us, the focus on self-care, which I thought, he's not wrong, given what we've all been through. And the time is our biggest resource. But it was fascinating because he's got the data to back all of this up. It's really interesting. And he posts something new on LinkedIn every day that's really good, consumable, useful information. The other thing I liked was Howard Feinberg and their attorney, and I cannot remember his name, though he looks just like Seth Godin, if you're into marketing, is how actively the Insights Association is working on our behalf to try and get legislators in Washington to at least be sensitive to the needs of the insights industry. Mm-hmm. And some of the changes they've made in terms of, the tax limit for contractors and things like that. So you don't mind paying annual dues to an association that's going to work for you. And they clearly are, in and above all things like putting on conferences and stuff like that. But those were the 2 I probably took the most notes on of all of the sessions. So again, it's, to me, the value of this event is half of it's in the sessions. The other half is in the after session, between session stuff that's so valuable.
Yeah. And I completely agree with that. I think the way they run sessions and then they run roundtables and you've got, the opportunity to go off and they actively kind of mix you so that you've got the opportunity to meet with new people and reconnect with existing people. One of the other things I wanted to kind of raise there and has been a real moment for me was listening to people talk about synthetic data, which, I think in the UK, I'm sure there's lots of people that might listen to this and disagree, but I think we're still in that point in the UK market where we're discussing, is it valid? What are the merits of it? How can it be used? There's a degree of nervousness, maybe a degree of skepticism. What struck me about my American cousins was how much more it seems to be an accepted part of the insight sort of landscape and the insight infrastructure. And again, some of the conversations about and hearing about how clients are building their own synthetic panels, for instance. And this is not a gosh, will they or should we? We've done it and we are using it now for research and insight perspectives. Really brought home to me just how quickly the market is moving and how important it is to go to other markets like the US, if you're in the UK, to understand and hear what's going on, because I'm sure there will be some of that going on in the UK now. And I think from a growth perspective, from an agency perspective, what are the implications of synthetic data? What are the business opportunities that you can have as an agency? How can you use it? How can you convince clients that maybe you're the advisor for synthetic? Can you develop product around synthetic? Assuming you believe the perspective that it is a valid and accurate way of predicting human behavior. And as you know, Steve, I'm no expert in this. My research skills are, but I think the idea of developing that product, but also understanding what the threats are to an agency's business model as a result of that. Are we moving to a situation where primary research isn't the first thing that people do, it's the last thing they do? So they use AI to synthesize their existing data. They maybe use synthetic data sets to test ideas, and then go out to primary research to do study or to understand consumer beliefs. I think there's that. And then there's also, what's the opportunity if you're building these data sets and you're using synthetic data, then the models on which you are basing them and the quality of the data you have got has got to be absolutely top notch. And whether there's an opportunity to position your agency or position yourself as being, we can provide you with that premium level, high value data, because that's the basis on which you're going to build your synthetic data models, I think is also a really interesting commercial.
Funny that the first comment you made about do maybe secondary research first, then do primary research as the last step, so to speak.
Yeah.
There were, of the first 5 presenters, 3 were about AI. And the takeaway ostensibly from all 3, including the gentleman from Eli Lilly, was AI is going to do 70 to 80% of the heavy lifting up front, and the special expertise, nuanced work will be left to the insights professionals for the last, 20 to 30%. They all said that.
Yeah.
In one manner or another. And I'm just cynical enough to believe that they were trying to convince themselves and not us, that they all see that in 5 years, we might not have any insights jobs, and that there's going to be one guy pushing a button who's going to pull together their synthetic data set, run a survey against it, do some automated qual against it, and come up with a recommendation for the head of marketing, and it's done. And there's no more needs for insight. And is that going to happen? I sure as hell hope not. Nobody in the industry wants it to happen. But I really felt like they were trying to convince themselves more than us that things were going to be fine, and there would be lots of opportunity for that last 20%. I'm not convinced.
Okay. Well, I am more optimistic about that, I think, maybe than
I'm
you
glad.
are.
I'm trying to wait. Now, let me, an anecdote unrelated to this, but an anecdote recently happened. I read a lot of articles about the automation of sales, because that's kind of the space that I play in, and the impact of AI. On the flip side of that, there are a lot of articles about AI in the buying process to help vet vendors, to find vendors, to narrow the list down. I reached out to some Fortune 500 insights buyers in the last week. To ask them what they're doing with AI when it comes to purchasing of market research services, insight services, whatever. The answer? Nothing. So you get sort of this, is it all hype? But then, you talk to somebody like Eli Lilly and you go, oh, it ain't hype. They're really doing it. But then these were Fortune 500 companies going, we're not using it for purchasing. It's still, I don't want to say it's the Wild West, because I think we're a little bit past that, but maybe not too far past that. So I'm glad you're optimistic. I'm still skeptical.
I am optimistic, but I do think it's going to require a significant transformation of the industry. And I think the value proposition for agencies is going to change. I think it's going to be far less talk about what we do and far more focus on the value we add, which I believe is a good commercial financial outcome. I actually think you're going to end up with the obfuscation of the industry into people that provide data as a utility. So they're pumping data into these big organizations for them to kind of run their own models on, or run their own insight or their own analytics. And that's already happened to a degree, I think. And at the other end of it, you're going to have high value, high level consultancy where clients are still going to go, I don't know what to do with all this data and all this insight. Can you tell me what I should do about it? And what commercial decisions should I make as a result of it? You know what though, Steve, I'm going to park that for the moment because I think there's an episode in this. Let's do an episode maybe on AI and its uses within an agency. It's interesting what you were saying about the buying side of things, but from a sales side of things, I'm seeing having lots of conversations about how you use AI in an agency to help with the sales and marketing side of things. So maybe there's
badly is the answer right now, Paul.
Well, but let's talk. Let's have a chat.
Okay.
Let's have an episode about that.
Fair enough. Yes.
So I'm just mindful of time. We've got another couple of minutes. My only final thought about the event, other than actually to say thank you to the Insights Association, who I think the team there did an absolute sterling job of organizing it, arranging and stuff, is my goodness, just how good are in-person events. And I know we've talked about this in the past, but the value of doing that for 3.5 days, although it's very intensive and quite kind of full on, the value of doing that over a virtual call. If I was I was trying to think of kind of what's the metric, and I was kind of thinking those interactions I've had over that last couple of days, it's kind of almost 3 times the value of the same interaction on a virtual call. And it just really did reinforce to me just the value and the efficacy of in-person events and how positive they are.
You know, one of the things we talk about in sales training is that buyers don't buy from you until they get to know you, like you, and trust you. And boy, you really get to accelerate that process at an in-person event. That's really, even through Zoom calls, it's not the same, and certainly not over LinkedIn and things like that. There's nothing like it. And I think, at least my myopic observation is, since COVID ended and people have started going back to events, they're all setting record attendance right now, total number of registrations. This was the biggest summit ever. I know they try and limit it, but it was still the biggest ever. But, the events I went to last year, like Quirks and the CRC here in the States, best attendance they've ever had. And I think it's, to your point, Paul, is there's nothing like human-to-human interaction and building relationships and building trust. And people, whether, either overtly or covertly innately know that and get out there and want to connect with others in the tribe. I think it's critical. So no, I'm a big fan. I think that, to your point, Insight Association does a nice job with this. And this is in the absence of leadership. They still don't have their president of the association after Melanie Cartwright stepped down. So yeah, good event. If you haven't been, to Paul's point earlier, go look at it, consider it. It's every January, alternating between the east and west coast of Florida. No, it was not sunny, warm, lay on the beach weather, but sure as heck better than the ice and snow that waited for me back here in Tennessee.
Yeah, and the flooding and the rain here in the UK.
There you go.
On which positive note, Steve, as ever, thank you very much. Hope that's been of interest to our audience. As I said, both to people who were there and kind of helping summarize some of what was there, but also for anybody that wasn't able to make it to get some value and get some insights. As ever, I'm sure Steve and I are available for calls, discussions, conversations if people want to pick our brains more. But for now, thank you very much, Steve, and we'll be back soon with our next episode.
A pleasure was mine, Paul, as always. I'm glad you had a chance to experience the summit. Hope you get to make it in future years as well. And I'll see you on the next episode.
All right. Cheers, dude. Take care.
See you, buddy.
Thanks for watching and listening to Across the Pond. Get in touch with Paul at clientadvocates.co.uk and Steve at harpethmarketing.com. Look forward to seeing you next time.